Hello, Internet. I'm Matt.
And I'm Monster Punter.
And this is the Parallax Scrolling Podcast, where we give you our perspective on video games and the news that affects them when we're not feeling terrible. As you might be able to hear, I am sick. I've been recovering. It's been a heck of a time.
And I went to the clinic yesterday. I had an allergic reaction to something. So I'm a little on the sleepy side from the medicine I've been taking, and but I get to have steroids, I guess.
And I sound completely congested, so this is going to be a fun podcast for you to listen to. So I'll cut out all my coughing, and I'll probably cut out his yawning too, unless it's funny. Then I might leave it in.
Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. Have you been able to play anything fun since we last recorded?
Yes, I went to the Galloping Ghost Arcade. To my knowledge, it is the...
It's in Chicagoland for those who are not regional.
Yeah, on Saturday, I went to the Galloping Ghost Arcade. I believe it's the largest arcade, at least in the region, if not
I think so.
The whole United States here. I played Burger Time again.
Yeah.
I also played Junior Pac-Man. I got to play Junior Pac-Man, the arcade version, for the first time in a long time. And it reinforced the fact that it's my favorite Pac-Man game. It's really good. And unfortunately, it's like criminally underrepresented. I came back home and I looked up how I could play it. Of course, there's the Atari 2600 version, and then there's the arcade version. That is it. That's all you have.
Yeah.
So I'm going to try to hunt down a ROM for it and play it on.
Some emulation, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what else to do. I don't want to go and buy an arcade cabinet, and I don't want to play the 2600 version. I mean, I love the 2600, but I want to play the arcade one.
Right.
And I even looked at something like the Evercade Versus. I did talk about that at one point in time. I wanted to buy one, and I ended up not being able to get one. And I looked up if they had released Junior Pac-Man on one of their cartridge collections. Turns out the answer is no, which is a great way to still support those developers of all those old games. With the Evercade Versus. And then you get a cool cartridge and stuff like that. I'm thinking about getting it anyway, but only Pac-Man is on there. No other games from that franchise. So I'm left with emulation as really the only way to play the arcade version. And
I think that's how we are with a lot of games anymore, especially like older games. Is either the physical copies are starting to corrode and erode, or you're just so impossible to find that the only way to play them is through emulation.
Yeah, so I mean that's the only way we get to play it. I'm going to play it though, some more.
Cool.
And I think I'll have a lot of fun with it.
Nice,
I played Crazy and Wild at the arcade too, which is an old Sega game. It's, sprite scrolling game. It's really it was terrible. Like the game wasn't bad, but everything was reversed color. You know how like
oh yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Like the negative. It's like the negative version of all the colors. Like something was up with the screen really bad. But I was like, you know what? I'm gonna play this anyway because some friends are playing a shooter game next to it. I'm like, I'm gonna play Crazy and Wild because it was something you could sit down and play. And
so the colors were crazy and wild, you would say?
Yes, they were. They were indeed. I had to play Mortal Kombat 1 a little bit while I was there. I do plan on getting that game. It was good.
Yeah, it looks really fun.
Yeah,
and I haven't felt about a Mortal Kombat game in a long time.
Yeah, I played a Lupin the Third game too that was there. It's from Japan. And it's supposed to be like Space Ace or Dragon's Lair, where you're supposed to push a direction or hit a button at the right time. But there was like no context clues like you get in Space Ace or Dragon's Lair. It was simply you had to kind of like guess when you were supposed to push a button, but when you didn't push a button, it would tell you what you're supposed to do. So like it would only tell you what happened after you died, what you were supposed to do. And when you go to Galloping Ghost, it's $25 and you play as much as you want, so it's free play. So at the end of the day, I mean, I guess I couldn't be too mad at something like that.
But back in the day, that was a quarter eater.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
Like to pay a quarter. Well, technically, it wasn't a quarter every life, but you got like 3 lives. But
still,
to take up one of your lives because you didn't push a button, kind of silly. And you got to see the same death sequence again and again.
Yeah.
And again.
Well, I mean, that's how old school games work, though.
Yeah. I mean, those old FMV games were definitely like that.
Yeah.
But I played several other games there while I was there too. Those are the ones that just kind of stick in my mind as I think about it. At home, I've been playing more Bloons Tower Defense. I am getting through the Trails games, and I played more Street Fighter. So, yeah, that's what I did.
Nice. I have been trying to find stuff to play. Because I put down Starfield, like I said before, and Vampire Survivors, as fun as it is, you can only re-unlock stuff after a while before you just need to take a break. So I've been trying to find stuff to take a break with, and I went back to Loop Hero, and having fun with that. But I'm not playing very much because again I've been sick, so I've been getting a lot of rest. However, I have gone back, been playing some more Monster Hunter now, and I actually beat the Diablos by myself.
Oh, nice!
I had to use a Legiana sword and shield, so because I had to have ice, and that's the only ice weapon.
Mm-hmm.
And Legiana's a pain in the butt to fight already, so like Legiana's just the step down from Diablos. It's like, yay, I did that. Now I have Diablos randomly showing up around my house. That's not fun. So, but it's it's still a fun game. It's still something I can do while I'm taking the dog for a walk, or I'm stuck somewhere, like in a doctor's office or something. I guess I need something to do. So I'm enjoying that. Yeah.
I have something I wanted to clarify. When I was talking about the Evercade Versus and those cartridges, and I was saying you could support those developers, those games are all licensed. So you really do get the money that you pay toward it. Some of it does really actually go to the developer. So just it's a food for thought. Cool.
Well, I do plan to try and check out some other games this week when I'm feeling better. I just recently, in fact it was today, I downloaded the Game Boy emulation for the Switch, because I thought that was part of the expansion pass, which I don't have, but no, it's part of the regular Nintendo Online, so I downloaded that. Played Gargoyle's Quest again, and I love Firebrand. He's like one of my favorite Capcom characters of all time. But man, is that game rough. Especially in the beginning. It's rough, but all those games are rough in the beginning. And I started playing Wario Land 3. I never played it before. It's like, I don't know how to explain it, but it's like a Metroidvania. Or like a Metroid, because you pick the level you go to, but you can revisit those levels. In fact, you kind of have to if you want to collect everything. So, and I've only played like maybe half an hour or so of it, but I'm like, okay, I could kind of get behind this. So, I'm looking forward to playing that. I do need to go back to Zelda and try and get that done, but I haven't had a whole lot of time to just sit in front of my my console, my Switch itself lately, and I just don't want to play on the small screen. I'm that guy. I bought my Nintendo Switch, and I would much rather play with it plugged into the TV than take it places. I'll play it places if I have to. I'd rather not.
I'm not as much of a mobile gamer as I am Like when I play games, I just want to sit down and
Yeah.
just enjoy a game.
Yeah. You want to get
can't-
absorbed in what you're doing.
Yeah, I can't do it. Like I have, but I never usually play it for very long. Mobile
Yeah.
gaming just isn't for me, really, for the most part.
Yeah. And not everything's for everybody. That's kind of an obvious, but yeah. So, yeah, that's pretty much been the game front. Before we go into our news stories, which we have a lot of micro, or at least I do have a lot of micro news stories today. I want to get to comments from last video because I like listening to you guys and hearing what you have to say, and getting feedback from Monster about what's going on there. So I got 2 comments today. Both of them are from that one dude. I'll go with the first one. When we were talking about genres we hated as kids that we ended up liking later.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, one genre I hated as a kid was visual novels or anything with a lot of reading. But this year I finished the Ace Attorney trilogy and the Danganronpa trilogy, and now I can say I'm a fan of visual novels games. Well, that's great. You know, I think that's a good thing. What about you?
My story was very much like his. Maybe I'll check those out. I mean, I played 13 Sentinels.
Yeah.
So I've been recommended the Danganronpa games. I watched the anime, and the anime is
brutal,
weird. Yeah, very brutal. People.
Oh, the manga is
premise.
Yeah, I mean the manga itself is woohoo.
But yeah. I mean, when he pointing out those games, I was actually, you know what? Let me check right now. Let me check right now, because I'm on my PC here, and yep, okay. So I in fact do at this particular point in time have the Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney trilogy downloaded on my PC.
Oh, excellent.
So maybe I should give it a try. Is it on? My brother still has my Xbox, so I don't know if it's available on Xbox.
You and your tragic brother has my Xbox stories. They're so fun.
Yeah.
But then, so his second comment was about the question I asked last week about sharing scary game moments. And this one, I started reading a bit of it, and I was like, oh, I can share on this one. He says, I don't play many scary games, but a creepy moment I remember from a non-horror game is from a game called A Hat in Time. In the 3rd chapter of the game, there is a level called Queen Vanessa's Manor. It goes from a fun 3D platformer to a horror game, and they allow the player's ability to make it more intense. And I have actually, I've owned A Hat in Time for a long time. Back when I was, able to stream a little more consistently, I actually streamed A Hat in Time. And he's not kidding. Queen Vanessa's Manor is terrifying.
See,
everything about the game, it's this cute little girl, and she's on a magical, wonderful adventure to fix her spaceship so she can go back home. And she just she's got like a little bit of an attitude, and it's just such a fun story. And then you get to this chapter, and this chapter is like literally the horror chapter of the game, because it's all scary stuff, and there's a shadow guy you gotta talk to. You start going through this manor, and it's got creepy moments. Like it's the atmosphere is unsettling a little bit, but it's when you actually see Queen Vanessa. Did you ever watch SpongeBob? Like early days? There was a particular cartoon where they had where SpongeBob and Squidward had to work the night shift. They'd never done it before. And so Squidward was telling horror stories to SpongeBob about the hash slinging slasher. And I'll actually find a picture and put it in the video. But yeah, she kind of looks like that. Like she's just this giant hunched over lady. Like she's just a shadow lady, but she's got these intense red eyes, and she's charging at you. And you're inside a building, so you don't have anywhere to really run. It's terrifying. So,
all right.
Yeah. So thank you for the comments. If you have any other comments or questions, I greatly appreciated when Dragon Knight gave us those that question about the genres from when we were kids. I love that question. Thank you. But if you got questions like that and you want to ask us and get our opinion on them, let us know in the comments down below. We want to hear from you. We love building this community up, and getting to hear from you guys really, it's a really nice thing, and it also pads our content. So keep it up. That was a joke. That was.
Well, it's nice to talk about some with things that the people who listen to us are talking about.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and that's the truth of the matter is I love being able to talk to you guys, and some of you I get to see in real life, and I get to have conversations with you. But it's also nice to have just input from anybody and everybody, because we want you to be included in the things we talk about. So keep it up. Alrighty, we've been at this a while. I think it's time for some news, don't you?
Sure.
Let's get the lighthearted, fluffy stuff out of the way. First off, Nintendo is in agreements, apparently, with Sony to make a live-action Zelda movie.
Okay.
What do you think about that?
If it's not like the 80s show, I don't want to watch it.
I kind of agree with that. There needs to be a point where he even if it's not, there needs to be a point where he actually is able to hang out with the princess for whatever amount of time, whatever it takes, and she says something, and even if he bumps into her or something, he just goes, "Well, excuse me, princess."
Yeah.
that would make me so happy. That would make me very happy. But yeah, no, I kind of want to know how it's gonna work. Apparently, Miyamoto is co-producing it with Avi Arad, who did Into the Spider-Verse.
Okay.
So this might be amazing. Just
or it may never see the light of day.
I think it'll actually come out, considering how well Mario did. But just don't get somebody who's completely unattached to the character to be the character.
Live action has me worried, to be honest with you.
We'll see how it plays out. I mean, it is Sony, though.
Live action Dragon Ball happened, and you saw how that went.
Right, but at the same time, Sony is done really good with live action movies adaptations, so we'll see. Okay. Next story. Actually, I'm gonna do that one next. This one I want to do because I think you're excited for this.
So
BioWare celebrated November 7th as N7 Day. It's like a BioWare holiday, Mass Effect holiday.
Okay.
And so how do they celebrate? And how do they celebrate it? They dropped three teaser films titled Epsilon, Defiance, and Nebula. And then they released a final trailer, which is all three of them combined. And it's basically teasing a new Mass Effect game.
Be very cool. I would definitely be interested in.
You love Mass Effect.
Yeah. I have the trilogy. Yeah. I bought it again on PS4 a while back. I'm partway through the second game. I got distracted into playing other games last year, and I just have not gotten back to it. Well, Trails mostly, I think.
Well, let's just hope, because they did so well with, Mass Effects 1, 2, and 3. And although they've kind of split their community with Andromeda. So we'll see what happens. We'll see how things play out.
Yep.
So, yeah. And then lastly, in terms of light news, do you remember when we did the PlayStation Showcase?
Yes.
And we sat there and we did our reactions and we watched it all. And we saw this one game being teased that we didn't know what it was, because there was just a trailer leading up to the game. And it was called Revenant Hill.
Okay.
It is the spiritual successor to Night in the Woods, or it would be, except that they have canceled it. So, developer The Glory Society released a statement today stating that it's a lengthy Twitter post, but basically what it comes down to is several key members, or two key members of the team that were working on the game, had to step away indefinitely for health reasons. So they came together, the rest of them came together as a group and said, well, let's just cancel the game then. So Revenant Hill will not be coming out.
Well, that's a shame.
At least for now. I mean, it might come back in like a few years, but I think by that point the steam will be gone from whatever hype there is.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see. But yeah, that's the light, fluffy stuff.
Well, I have some things that are not exactly harsh, but we got one thing in common. We each have a story that kind of linked together. Yeah.
And in their harshness.
Yeah. Well, there's there's just a couple small things. So the PlayStation 5 Slim comes out this Friday, November 10th, and there's been a teardown of it. There's some important things to realize here. They say it's 33% smaller. It's a bit lighter. The width is a bit smaller. I mean, it's called the Slim, but how much? It's not terribly smaller. Yeah, honestly, it's about the size that things should have been when it first came out, because the original model is just holy cow. I mean,
it's massive.
It's so massive. The thing is I think they could have done better if they had gone with another process node shrink. So about a year ago, Sony went from the 7 nanometer process for their PlayStation 5 chips to the 6 nanometer process. The original chips were, I want to say, just over 300 millimeters squared. They went down to 270 by going from 5 nanometer to 6 nanometer. I'm sorry, from 7 nanometer to 6 nanometer. And so they reduced the cooling and everything, and so this new revised PlayStation is kind of like the ultimate version of what a 6 nanometer PlayStation 5 would have looked like at launch. I think another node shrink to 5 nanometers would have been able to actually make it a real slim model. But the fact of the matter is whether this holiday, if you're going to buy a PlayStation, whether you buy the big one or the small one, they both use the same chip. And so there's a lot of nice stuff is still in the PlayStation 5 Slim, but from a power delivery standpoint, from or power consumption standpoint, I should say, and everything else, and I guess the sound field is a little bit different too, and so ultimately it is a little bit quieter as long as you have the front facing you, then I think you'll be fine.
Well, here's my thought / I guess complaint. We've been able to advance technology so far, and we're able to do all these great leaps and bounds, and we've been able to do it with mobile phones, and we've been able to do it with video game consoles. Sony always comes out with a slim version. They've been doing this since PlayStation 1.
Yep.
Why not just start with the Slim?
Because the process and technology available at the time when the quote-unquote fat one comes out is just not there.
But why wouldn't there be better time and resources spent to make that happen?
That is not stuff that's within their control. These things, consoles and stuff, get spec'd out years before they come out, and so at some point you have to, say, hey, we're going to choose this process node to create our console, or else you're going to be waiting forever. I mean, who knows? Maybe Sony did wait to select the 7 nanometer process for their original system instead of using the 14 nanometer process that was available before. Did you know the PS5 Pro, or PS4 Pro, I'm sorry, uses the 16 nanometer FinFET process that came out 3 years later, and the original PlayStation 4 released on the 32 nanometer process. The 14 nanometer, 16 nanometer process, I'm sorry, for the PS4 Pro simply was not available to Sony at the time they made the original PlayStation 4. But that's the case with this node shrink here.
That's fine and all, but I just think that like you said, that they've had this design process for years. So then why not just say, okay, this is the plan we're starting with, and if by the time we're ready to release this thing, we'll find a way to condense it more, let's condense it more before putting it out.
Because when you do a node shrink, it's not as easy as just taking, without getting too technical, it's not as easy as just saying, hey, let's put it on this line that's a better process node. Bada bing, bada boom, here's a new chip. No, there's more that goes into it. There actually is some real engineering that has to take place. And
look, they just need to contact the department and tell them to find some forest gnomes and shrink it all down, and that's all they got to do.
Oh,
that's all they got to do. Just put forth that effort.
Are they cousins of the underpants gnomes?
Maybe, I don't know.
Okay.
If that's the case, maybe they should make underpants consoles.
Maybe.
So you really take it on the go.
But I'm just saying that, at some point you have to pick and choose your battles, and so we are here. I think Microsoft uses the 6 nanometer process for their Series X now, but I could be mistaken. If they're not, I could see that being realistic too, because going to the 6 nanometer process is a more expensive process node versus the 7 nanometer. So it's possible Microsoft is stuck on the 7 nanometer process node because they were losing so much money on the Xbox as it is. You don't want to, when it doesn't really benefit the end user directly very much. They probably just stayed there. But anyway,
they're going to come out with the -1 nanometer mode.
Maybe eventually. I know Intel is ditching at some point the nanometer nomenclature, and they're going with angstrom. Yeah. So they're going with Intel. They're calling it Intel 4, and then I don't think there's going to be an Intel 3. It just goes to 20 angstrom.
Interesting.
So something to think about.
Yeah. So, do you have any other Sony news, since we're in the Sony block?
We don't know the exact reasons for this, but this comes from The Verge. It's been shared on other places too.
Yeah.
Sony is cutting off Twitter support for their PlayStation 4 and 5 share button. The reasons,
and we can speculate all day long.
Yeah, we can't say for sure what the reason behind it is. My guess is that it has something to do with Elon Musk starting to charge for everything.
Possibly.
I also think it may be somewhat tied to, if you want access to their API, you have to pay them money. So if Sony has to access their API to be able to share,
every time a user tries to share something, that's
no,
a
it's
lot
like a
of money.
Flat fee for a company, but it's not a small fee.
Oh, is it? Okay.
The whole reason that they started charging for that is because these large language models like ChatGPT was mining Twitter for training purposes for their AI bot.
Yeah, how dare they use their robot to learn words, to make words?
Well,
weird.
Technically speaking, I don't like the fact that they're using anybody's speech or anything. But apparently Twitter thinks anything you're posted on that platform is theirs. And so they want to charge these people who want to use their large language model. So it could be in relation to that. We don't know exactly why, but they're pulling it.
Right.
And so,
which, by the way, if you were following me on Twitter, that's now X, and you haven't heard from me, yeah, I decided to step away because it's just kind of healthier. So I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so anyway, that's been pulled. The last PlayStation news has to do with a warning that the PlayStation boss had put out.
Former PlayStation boss.
Sean Layden.
Yep.
You know a bit more about this.
I do. Yeah, Sean Layden stepped down in 2019 amid corporate restructuring, but I liked how Kotaku basically said that he's become like this like post-apocalypse end of times speaker, and he keeps saying things like, "Hey, this is what's going to be, this is what's going to be happening, and keep an eye out and watch the end of video gaming just unfold." So Sean Layden went onto a podcast, forgetting the name of it at the moment. Oh, there it is. LAN Parties. And he basically stepped forward and he made some statements. First, consolidation could be an enemy of creativity. I also think rising costs in gaming are an existential threat to all of us. And the entry of Google, Netflix, Apple, Amazon into the sector, otherwise known as the barbarians at the gate. I thought that was kind of an interesting take. But he basically goes on, and this is where the big chunk of text comes from this man. My concern around consolidation is that it often impacts creativity. For instance, it takes some kind of small, independent wild horse studios and brings them into a larger conglomerate, and essentially time slows down the bigger you are. Time slows down. I'm also concerned when studios get bought, instead of enabling a way to create their game, they maybe get absorbed into a larger enterprise that's making a larger game. You know, how many studios are involved in making blockbuster games that will stagger the mind. I'm just concerned about what it does to the creativity urge inside of the studios, and can they keep that sort of independent creativity alive, or do they just get absorbed to the larger whole? Time will tell, but it's a bit concerning. When you go from hundreds of voices to dozens of voices, you lose some voices. Go ahead.
Go ahead, if you're not done.
He's got one last thing I'm going to throw in here. Actually, okay, I got two more statements from him. If we continue to coalesce around the 4 or 5 genres, then we won't get the new players because those people have already said, we're not interested in your genres. Don't kid yourself that someone who said no to Call of Duty for the last 15 years is going to start suddenly saying yes to Call of Duty. And then lastly, preservation is important. I'm hoping that more people in the industry, certainly the big players, begin to realize that there's an obligation and responsibility. This isn't throwaway stuff we're making. This is stuff that should be around for a long time because future generations will enjoy it in the same way that we have, and it's criminal that we're not doing more to protect it. I like this guy.
He has some interesting takes. One about the consolidations.
Yeah.
I think there is a little bit of something to that. I mean, he's worked in the industry, so
yeah.
I don't want to say he's wrong on, as a matter of fact,
right.
But I would say that as far as the industry is concerned,
mm-hmm.
indies have definitely picked up the torch and have started carrying it forward. You see more creativity, art direction changes, risk taking in their gameplay elements. All that stuff primarily happens in the indie scene now, and right. The AAA scene will pick that stuff up as it becomes successful. But I think as an industry, I think we're probably better off than we have been in a long time.
Right, but I think he also brings some very valid thoughts. Like he did say, you should take some kind of small independent wild horse studio to, bring these changes. But he also just talked about and I agree with this, when you start bringing up some of those smaller studios into your bigger company, I can't remember which one off the top of my head, but I do remember somebody got picked up by, I believe it was Sony, and they were working on a game. and they were told, yeah, stop working on that game, work on this game. I can see that being a problem.
Well, I mean, that depends. Okay, so yeah, it could be, but what was their reason for making them change the game? I think there's a lot more nuance that we're never going to know. Like, what if it just turned out that game that they were working on was just like complete garbage? What if it was
true?
Oh, I don't know, Redfall. But
God, really, you just got to take some wild shots here, huh? Well, we're on the podcast.
Yeah, wild shots. I'm sorry. They did make it better recently, believe it or not.
They did.
But so there's to assume that they're just killing these people's creativity for no reason at all. I think we got to be careful about the assumptions we make.
Well, it's right, but that's why he's saying, he's bringing it like, I'm concerned this is going to start happening more often. Like I said, like he's like doomsaying. He's like getting out there saying, hey, watch out for this stuff. This is bad for the business. This is bad for creativity. Knock it off.
We'll see, but I mean, yeah. I think that the indie scene is alive and well, and I don't think it's really that big of a problem industry wide. I think from a AAA perspective, when you're spending hundreds of millions of dollars on a project, there has to be some risk mitigation there.
Right, but at the same time, like you said, I've personally have been saying no to Call of Duty this entire time. What's going to make me automatically say yes?
That's the whole point. Right. They're not counting on you saying yes. They're counting on other players.
But that's the thing, is that there is a concern that these companies are going to put all their eggs in one basket. And when that fails, then video games in general could fail.
I think it's a little bit of doomsaying. I think about it this way.
Well, yeah, it's definitely doomsaying, but I think that's what it's still.
But Activision Blizzard, even though they had tons of other games, other AAA games that they're releasing. Sure, they had Call of Duty every year, but they had other things too.
Well, right, but I don't think he's just arguing Activision Blizzard. He's talking about. I think he's talking in general terms, making general sweeping knowledge.
My point is that my point is that I don't think we're anywhere close to being what he's saying. Take Sony, for instance. They have many first-party games coming out. Nintendo has a wide breadth of first-party games coming out. Most of them say Mario something on them, but they do.
Yeah, so that makes them definitely different.
Yeah.
But I think at the same time, though, like, I think I remember reading something about, wasn't there a problem with Embracer Group? Because they kept buying up all these.
Embracer Group was downsizing as well. Yes.
Yeah, but they were also like a lot of the studios they quote unquote saved ended up their IPs are not being used now for anything.
Well, it's because the Embracer Group as a whole, they went out and bought too many companies. Now they don't have money to fund those companies.
Well, right, and I think that if anything, that's probably the biggest thing he's pointing to is like, this is a problem. If this keeps happening, this is what could happen to everyone else. So,
well, we'll see. I just think that there's plenty of examples where it's still fine. Nothing is. I don't think we're anywhere close to, it being a major problem yet.
No, but it's still something to be aware of.
Now, when he talks about Google, Netflix, Apple, and Amazon...
Yeah, I called them barbarians at the gate. I was like, what? Yeah. That's a little harsh, but okay.
I think Apple is the biggest one right now. They're trying to unify their architectures.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say Apple and Amazon, probably the biggest threats.
Amazon, well, they're making game studios, so that's not the same thing. Apple's actually got hardware out there.
Well, and... Right.
So we'll see.
But so did Google, and that's why I'm like,
Yeah, okay. Well, did they have hardware? I guess if you count controllers.
No, they did. They had the Stadia hardware.
Yeah, controllers.
Mm-hmm.
The Chromecast has been around for a while. I wouldn't call that Stadia thing. So they had a bunch of controllers out there. Google, they may come back with something at some point. We'll see. Netflix is trying to get the streaming gaming thing going in their stead. We'll see how that ultimately pans out.
Yeah, that'll fail once people can't share passwords.
So Amazon is not really competing in the same way. They're making studios.
Yeah.
One of them put out a game that lasted like a few weeks and got taken down. Then there's Apple, which actually has hardware out there and could try to be something more akin to, your traditional video game presentation with,
and if they
with
can,
a console and things like that. The problem with them is that it's just so expensive for the hardware.
Yeah.
That I don't really know if they'll be a serious threat unless they actually want to put out like a loss-leading kind of device, like a PlayStation or an Xbox. I don't really know if they could compete. I know they have millions of iPhones out there, and maybe they're going to try to use that as an entry point.
Yeah, I don't know if Apple's put out a loss-leading anything since the Mac.
Well, they still have Microsoft to thank for even being around, believe it or not.
I know, but that's what I'm saying. Like, that's the only loss-leading product they've ever made.
Yeah, well, they don't make any losses on anything they make anymore. I'm sure about that.
Yeah, exactly.
So I don't know. Maybe in a year or two things will be different, but I don't see them being like direct competitors at this particular point in time.
Right. No, but you know what? I think that last paragraph I read, I think that's something that resonates with both of us, though. The preservation is important. Hoping more people. Yeah, like it's just the fact he's like, yeah, this isn't throwaway stuff we're making. Like, yeah, this isn't a consumable. And I think that's the problem. I think a lot of people do see video games as something you consume, because you do. You can, you sit there and you play the game and you enjoy it, and then for a lot of people, those games just sit on the shelf or sit in the hard drive until it's time to either delete it or sell it. And there's just a point where it's like, no, this is interactive art. As much as we've had that arts versus game argument before. Yeah. I think if anything, it starts off as a game and you play it, but then when you're done with it and you have no, like, you don't think you'll ever go back to that game, I think it then becomes art. Because then you can look at it and say, this project was amazing. This was something, it's like a movie. You watch a movie, you don't go back and watch every single movie you've ever seen. But you still hold on to them.
Think about that for a little while before I agree or disagree, but yeah.
I don't know, I'm just some good thoughts to think about,
Yeah, something I totally too disagree with is the layoffs that happened at Bungie.
Yeah, and you're talking about Bungie, and I'm going to talk about Ubisoft. So go ahead, talk about Bungie.
Well, Bungie had a really bad quarter. They lost a ton of money. I don't have the exact figure here, but they laid off something on the order of 800 people, which was a good percentage of the company. And I think it's terrible. They're working on these upcoming games, Marathon, and the Final Shape. Who knows how those are going to pan out now? Yeah. Their biggest risk with Bungie is the fact that their monetary livelihood rests on a single game. Destiny 2. That's it.
Right now, yeah.
So when Destiny 2 is doing bad, they don't have the money. I think these layoffs are probably a bit premature, but
they needed to come out with Marathon like 5 years ago.
At least 3.
Yeah, because they needed to have something besides Destiny 2 to rely on. They were expecting that to be like some cash cow, and that's not how that works.
But I think like Marathon's even supposed to be another live service game.
It is, from what I understand.
Yeah, and oh man, live service games. We've had this conversation already. They are so risky. They are some of the most riskiest games out there, and if they don't succeed, they're gone. And there's no game preservation for live service games, none. I just think the industry, if it keeps leaning into this live service game model, I can't see it being a sustainable thing.
No, I don't either.
I don't like the idea anymore that you play a game and that game only for years. It's just not a good situation. Variety is the spice of life, people.
Yeah, yep. And apparently Ubisoft's doing the same thing. They are adding some variety and spicing up their life by letting people go. So
at least for those people, that's they get to participate in finding job. But I mean, when they find something,
the whole thing is like
new and rewarding.
So Ubisoft has let out another 124 people, 98 of those people from their Canadian workforce, and to streamline their business. That's their excuse. They're streamlining their business. Here's a hey, Ubisoft, you want a great way to streamline your business? Stop making garbage.
I do want to get Assassin's Creed Barrage,
and that's fine. But any other game, if it's not like, if you don't even think that this game is going to sell well, don't do it. You know, and I know we were just talking earlier about like, variety, and we're talking about video game preservation, and we're talking about smaller companies getting absorbed and all, this sounds contradictory, but for Ubisoft, we're talking Ubisoft.
Yeah.
Stick with what you know, because this is what you're good at. But when you try to do all these weird little ventures off and they don't pan out well, stop making sequels for them. Like, I don't know. Ubisoft just gives me a headache. And that's on top of the one I have right now because I'm sick. So, I just...
Okay.
Like, because you know that their Star Wars game didn't do well, right?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, who would have seen that coming? Me. But probably anybody else. But it's just that idea of you're not making proper business decisions for your company, so your answer is to fire people so that you can protect your pockets and you can please your investors. That was the one thing I wanted to bring up, because Ubisoft has said in the midst of its massive cost reduction plan to help improve profitability and appease investors. And I wish I could find a better way to say this, but I think investors need to rethink how they look at business expenditures, because I feel like a lot of investors don't understand video games.
It's a lot. It's like it's a lot of upfront cost for a payoff much later. I think some of these games are in development for 5 years, so you have 5 years of money being put into this product, and you're not going to see a return on investment for a long time.
But I think the problem is a lot of investors are putting money into these companies expecting nothing but AAA blockbuster games that are going to make them so rich they have multiple yachts. Yeah, and I think I would much rather, personally, I would be much more involved with a gaming studio if their investors were all about video games. Like, I'm putting money into you because I hear you guys make amazing games.
Well, you're looking for a private company then, because any public company definitely wouldn't fit that bill.
I know, and that's what I'm saying. Like, I just feel like investors need to understand that, but...
Yeah, but then again, it's really hard to sell your investment in a private company compared to public.
Yeah, no.
Anyway.
Yeah, no, that's pretty much it. Yeah, me too. And I think you and I have talked more than enough today. We did some chit-chatting beforehand, but we're approaching an hour on this recording, and it's going to be shorter than that, obviously. But, yeah, we need to get out of here because he's tired, and I'm weak. So we're going to get out of here. Thank you guys so much for listening. We appreciate you. Again, comments about anything we've talked about today, questions, anything, just tell us how your day was. Tell us something in the comments down below. We do want to hear from you, and we want to grow. So if you think we're worth it, tell people about us. We
appreciate it.
Yeah, and just, you don't even have to force them to hit the subscribe button. I mean, just do it when they're not.
Force anybody to hit that, but I mean,
yeah,
come on.
I mean, just do it when they're not looking. That's all. But no, just get them to listen to an episode or two and see what they think. And if they like us, encourage them to subscribe. To do that thing, because I'm tired and I can't say that word. Subscribe. There we go. I did it. But yeah. So until then, until next time, have yourselves a fantastic week. Have some awesome times with your games. We'll see you guys in the next one.
Take care.
Later.